Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I'm really excited we're diving into this today because we are about to decode the hidden, incredibly high stakes rules that secretly govern our world. Seriously, have you ever watched world leaders meet on the news and wondered why everything looks so perfectly choreographed? Every single handshake, every assigned seat, and every perfectly placed flag is actually part of a highly complex language. So let's jump right in and explore the fascinating art of international protocol. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at etiquette versus protocol. Second, we're taking a quick historical journey. Third, we'll meet the protocol officer. And finally, number 4, we'll decode the language of flags. All right, let's get started with Section 1, Etiquette versus Protocol. We mostly use the words etiquette and protocol like they mean the exact same thing in our daily lives, right? But on the world stage, things are entirely different. Why would a seemingly tiny misstep, like, say, sitting in the wrong chair at a global summit, cause a massive political crisis? I know it sounds super dramatic, but the consequences are very, very real. And the answer really just boils down to the huge difference between how you and I interact and how sovereign nations interact. Think of it like this. On one side, we have etiquette. These are just the social rules designed to make human interaction respectful and pleasant. It's pretty flexible. It covers our everyday manners, how we greet each other, or maybe how to properly give someone a gift. If you mess up etiquette, well, someone might think you're rude, but life goes on. But then, look at protocol. Protocol is strictly state level. It is a set of rigid, meticulously agreed upon laws and procedures. When world leaders meet, they aren't just representing themselves as people, they are literally embodying their entire nations. So a failure in protocol isn't just a simple social faux pas, it's a direct violation of an agreement between states. And that is exactly what can spark a serious diplomatic incident. Moving right along to Section 2, a historical journey. So how in the world did we get to these high-stakes rules? What's really fascinating is the origin of the words themselves. The word diplomacy actually comes from the Greek word dipluin, which means to fold. Back in the days of the Roman Empire, passports and travel permits were literally stamped onto two folded metal plates that were sewn together. And protocol? That comes from the Greek protokollon, which originally referred to the very first glued sheet of paper on official treaties and documents. So right from the very beginning, this entire field has been all about binding agreements and official documentation. And this isn't just some modern bureaucratic invention. As far back as 1450 BC, historical documents show structured diplomatic relations between Egypt and Babylon. Fast forward a bit to the Abbasid era, and we have famous works like Al-Jahiz's book, The Crown. That book meticulously outlined the manners for entering the presence of kings, how to properly speak to them, and the strict rules for receiving foreign envoys. Then moving into the modern era, we see the formalization of global rules starting with the 1815 Vienna Convention, which eventually paved the way for the absolute cornerstone of modern diplomacy, the 1961 Vienna Convention. And when we talk about that 1961 convention, the absolute crucial takeaway is this number right here, 52. The 1961 Vienna Convention contains exactly 52 articles that essentially run the modern diplomatic world. These 52 articles are what ensure that diplomatic missions can operate safely. They establish unbreakable rules, things like diplomatic immunity, tax exemptions for diplomats, and the absolute sanctity of embassies. That means a host country absolutely cannot enter a foreign embassy without the mission head's express permission. It is a massive, incredibly complex system to memorize, let alone execute flawlessly. Which brings us nicely to Section 3, the protocol officer. Okay, so who actually executes these 52 articles in real time with the global media watching their every move? Let's take a look at the traits required for this role. Honestly, it's almost a superhuman list. A protocol officer has to have a remarkably quick wit and a vast knowledge of both their own country's history and their guest's culture. They need a flawless appearance because, quite literally, they are the very first impression of the state. And notice that requirement for a constant, genuine smile. In this kind of high-pressure environment, a smile isn't just about being friendly. It is a highly calculated strategic tool used to diffuse tension and create a sense of intimacy and comfort between nations that might actually be rivals. And add to that, navigating this high-stakes world requires some serious linguistic gymnastics. Protocol officers often have to operate across the 6 official languages of the United Nations: Arabic, English, French, Spanish, Russian, and Chinese. Being tactful in your native language is hard enough, right? But doing it seamlessly across multiple cultural and linguistic barriers, that is an unbelievable skill. I really want you to focus on this quote for a second, because it absolutely captures the true essence of the job. The art of adhering meticulously to rules of conduct as a right of the state, not the individual. What this essentially means is that when a protocol officer is organizing a summit, or when a diplomat demands a very specific seating arrangement, it is never about personal ego. That officer represents the sovereignty, the independence, and the dignity of an entire nation. To concede a point of protocol is basically to concede a point of national pride. Now, let's look at how this plays out visually in Section 4, the language of flags. Let's bring all these abstract concepts directly into the real world. Flags are definitely not just colorful decorations for a photo op. A country's flag is the ultimate defining symbol of its independence and sovereignty. Because of that, most nations have incredibly strict laws that dictate the exact dimensions and Pantone colors of their flags, the highly specific occasions they can be raised or lowered to half-mast, and some really severe punishments for anyone who insults them. Because flags represent a nation's actual sovereignty, their physical placement when two nations meet is governed by this really rigid, almost mathematical geometry. So here is the golden rule when placing two flags outside a building. Step 1, the host country's flag is always placed on the building's right side. Now that means it sits on the left side from the perspective of an observer standing on the street looking at the building. Step 2, the visiting guest's flag is placed on the building's left side, which is the observer's right. This is a fundamental law. A foreign flag can never, ever be placed in a superior position to the host's flag on their own soil. Now, you might be wondering, why is it arranged exactly like this? Think about the balcony perspective. By strict protocol, a guest leader always stands to the right of the host leader. So if the host flag is placed on the building's right side and the guest flag is on the building's left side, what happens when the two presidents step out onto the balcony and face the crowd? They end up standing perfectly underneath their own respective flags. An observer looking up from the street sees the guest on the right standing directly under the guest flag. It's this flawlessly designed spatial dance. And as you can imagine, this dance gets infinitely more complex when multiple nations gather indoors, like at the UN General Assembly. How on earth do you arrange 20 different flags without showing any favoritism? Well, there are strict systems for that too. Sometimes flags are arranged alphabetically, starting from the right. Other times, if there's a clear host, the host flag takes the absolute center, and then the guest flags alternate left and right from the center based purely on diplomatic seniority. There are also specific running orders outlined by the UN Charter or the Arab League Charter. Basically, every single pole's placement is 100% deliberate. Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with. Today, we've pulled back the curtain on a world where everyday etiquette meets strict international law, where a simple smile is a diplomatic tool, and where spatial geometry literally dictates national pride. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you watch an international summit on the evening news, try looking past the politicians. Look closely at the flags behind them. Will you be able to decode who the host is and who the guest is just by observing that arrangement? You now have the secret language to read the room like a true diplomat. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep decoding the world around you.